Hey guys, how's it going? It's Craig. I'm out in the garage and today we've got a nice bit of Japanese import technology to take a look at. Let's take a look. Okay, so I picked this up a couple of weeks back on eBay and I've not had a chance to review it yet. I'm in the middle of destroying my garage and moving things around because I'm home working from out here during the lockdown period. But I've wanted to show you this because I've actually had a good bit of fun playing around with it, and I've got a couple of mods that I want to do as well. So I've always had Super Nintendos. Super Nintendo is this one. I think I retrobited last summer and it's nice and clean, and this is the condition of the Super Famicom. So let's try and put them together so you can see them. Okay, so you can see that how yellow this is. So I've always wanted a Super Famicom. The import model, not much difference to be honest with the compared to the Super Nintendo. It's not like the US model where it was a totally different design. Just the text along the front is a little bit different obviously than region on it as well. It came with Pilot Wings, great game. I got that on the English PAL version as well. I love playing Pilot Wings, so it's nice to see that come with it. Also give me a cart to test the console out with. So on to the main bit of kit is this piece of kit. So let's see if I can get that in shot for you. So it's the Supercom Pro1 SP-3200 and a floppy disk drive. So as you can imagine, this sits on top of the Super Nintendo or the Super Famicom. Your cart goes into the top of it, and then you can back up your games onto the floppy disks. Some games are too big to fit on a single floppy disk, so you've got to back them up onto multiple disks, and the system handles everything on there as well, so it's pretty good that it can handle everything. It came with one floppy disk in there, which has got 2 games on there, so they're obviously fairly small ROM sizes. But I haven't got any other floppy disks, so I'm either going to buy some floppy disks off of Amazon or eBay or somewhere, but they're looking pretty pricey at the moment. Or I'm going to see if my brother's got some, because he's got a massive Amiga collection and he's got loads of discs that he doesn't need. Okay, so I've got an idea for this as well. I want to do a little bit of a mod to it, just so I don't have to mess around with floppy disks all the time. There's something I've got in mind for this, so keep watching and I'll take a look at that in a little bit. But first of all, let's show you how it works, see what it's doing, and give you a little bit of the demo. Let's take a look. Okay, so it's set up on the Super Nintendo now. I don't set it up on the Famicom because I know this floppy disk inside of here is the games inside it are region specific, and they are 2 PAL games. So the guy didn't give me any instructions or any info on this when I bought it. So it was set up with the floppy drive, the Supercom system running on the Super Famicom, but the 2 games on the floppy disk were PAL games. So when you tried booting them on the Super Famicom, nothing happened. So I figured out quite soon after that once I plugged it into a Super Nintendo, you have to have a cartridge in the system to make it boot, and then you can boot off the floppy disk. So if I show you now, I've hopefully got screen record going as well. So I've got lots of options on this Supercom system. It says Supercom Pro.2 on the system, so I don't know whether it's had a firmware update at all, because the Supercom Pro1 is actually on the casing of it. Couple of things to note: it's a 16 meg RAM system, so when you download a cart, you store it into RAM, then you write it to the floppy disk, and then when you want to play that cart back, obviously you don't need the original back in there, but you need a game in there. You load from the floppy disk into the RAM, so the RAM will store it for the time when you're playing the game, and then it'll clear out when you want to put another game in there. So I know there's 2 games on this floppy drive, so let's give them a go. So we can play game file, which we want to do. We can play the game card, which is the cartridge. We can copy the game card onto another floppy disk. We can rename files, delete files, format the disk, load game data, and save game data. So that's your save file. So at any point you can save your game status and load your game status. You just literally restart the system, you come back into this menu, and you save from that point, which is a little bit unnerving. So if you spent a couple of hours on, or a bit of time spending some levels on Super Mario World, and then you've got to turn it off and turn it back on to save it, there's no save state in the disk, obviously, because it's not going to save it straight to that memory. You've got to turn the system off and you've got to save to the disk afterwards. so I was a little bit nervous about that. It does work quite well, so that's pretty good. Copy game file, so if you've got floppy disks and things like that, you can copy from one to another. So if you and your mates have all got the same system, you can do that as well. What I'm going to do now is play the game file. So we've got a floppy disk in here, you can see it lighting up orange now. And we've got two games on screen, so we've got Shanghai and we've got Monopoly. So if I just show you now, press on to Monopoly and press B on the control pad, waiting. You can hear that lovely ticking of a floppy drive going away, counting down from the memory files that it's stored on there. So it takes a little while, so it's a little bit weird to see a Super Nintendo loading a game off a floppy drive, but and it takes quite a while to do this. So but it's part of the fun. I just think that back when this came out, this must have been amazing to be able to back up your games at that point and not be able to not have to worry about it. There's no way of copying cartridges back then other than doing this method. And if you remember the back of that time as well, that things like Blockbuster Video was huge. So you could go down there, rent a game, put it onto a floppy disk, take it back the next day, but carry on playing it at home off your backup. So the opportunities on this was endless at the time. I'm a little bit gutted that it only came with one disc, because whoever had this originally probably used it a lot more. But it does have, this whole system has its limitations, and we'll go through some of those in a minute. Alright, so we're almost loaded. 15, 14, 13, here we go. So it builds up that anticipation. It's a bit like going back to floppy disks on your Amiga or on your Commodore and on your original 64s and things like that. Waiting for the game to load. Okay, so there we go. There we are, into Monopoly. So game runs exactly as it should now. There are some games which glitch a little bit, but this one seems to work absolutely fine. I've only had a quick play on it. I'm not a massive fan of Monopoly on a console. Even on the Switch, I think it's a bit boring. If you're going to play Monopoly, play it on a board game. There we go. So anyway, that's Monopoly working. Demonstrates how the floppy disk into the system works. What I'm going to do now is show you some modifications I want to make to this floppy drive, and we'll make those, test it out and see what it does. Let's take a look. Okay, so here we go. Here's the floppy drive that we've got in our system at the moment. Standard 3 1/4 inch floppy, 1.44 meg. Nothing special about it at all, but obviously quite limited on exactly the amount of games that we can store on this thing. So what I want to do is pop this open. I've already had this open before, so I think just to check the connections inside of it. Okay, so case is removed. Standard floppy IDE connected in here, and the power supply connects it to that one I showed you earlier. So it just, this little board in here converts your IDE into your connector for to the back of the Supercom system. What was that? A serial port? I can never remember what it's called. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to pop this off of here. Oh no, we're going to pop it off the back of the floppy drive. So that's our interface system. We can take our floppy drive, standard PC floppy drive from back in the day, and what we're going to connect it to is one of these. So this is a USB floppy drive emulator. So same type of connections on the back, power and the IDE cable, and then input on the front is a USB drive. You've got two buttons for selecting the slot, and then a little display to show you which slot you're on. So I'm going to connect this up, screw it in, hopefully the holes will line up underneath. Oh, look at that. So we're going to screw this into place, get this set up, and then we'll check if it works on the system. Okay, so connect this back in. If you remember, IDE cables always had a red line down the outside, and that always indicated to me to point towards power. So that one connects onto here, and this one onto here. And power back in. Make sure it's on all 4 pins. There we go. So that's back into there. Now we've got the USB drive in the front, that on there, and we can build the system back together. Okay, I'm going to pop some screws into the bottom of this, and then we're good to go. Let's give it a test. Okay, so you can probably see from my screen recording, I'm back at the main menu on this. I'm going to go into file 1 on my system, and I'm going to go into play game file. So play game file for file 1. I've got an Excel sheet on my well, a Google Docs sheet on my phone to tell me which storage location is which game. So 01 is Pilot Wings. I'm not going to load that one. I'm going to press Y to abort it. Oh, I've gone back in again with it. To abort that, if I press the right hand button again, go into file 2, so that's like swapping over to the second floppy disk. Go into that one, Super Mario World, so we're not going to do that because that's the one this cartridge is in at the moment. Y out of that one, and then file 3, let's have a look at that one. Super Street Fighter 2. That one doesn't load properly. It dumps, but it doesn't load properly. It takes a little bit of time, and I think I know what the issue is, and I'll have a look at that in a little bit. So file number 4. Okay, that's Super Street Fighter 2 as well, so that one had to split across 2 disks. So if you imagine floppy disk capacity, each of these files on here has got the same amount of space. Let's go to file number 6. Okay, so Aladdin. So Aladdin split on 2 discs, well, 2 parts on a single disc for some reason. The system does it itself, so I didn't really change anything. So I'm going to press B to launch that. Again, it's going to load down the time. Let's take a look. Come on. There we go. But so much quicker than loading off a floppy drive. Loading part 2 now. Again, much quicker than loading off the floppy drive. It takes a while to back it up to the USB, but once it's backed up, then it's done. Okay. So it's saying insert Aladdin part 3, so that must be on disk file number 7. So I'm going to switch to disk 7. I'm going to press B to retry. So that's like swapping the floppy disks over now. There we go. And as you can see, we're now into Aladdin. Let's have a quick blast. Oh, I'm frozen. I'm going to try that one again. See how it hangs sometimes? I think sometimes there's an issue with something inside of it, and it's not caching all the items to the memory. It's holding it in, it's crashing all the time. I think that's the issue we've had now. So it gets past it most of the time and it'll carry on loading, but there does seem to be a little bit of a glitch on this system. No, it's frozen again. So I think there's something up with this system. It's not storing everything into memory. I don't know what is going on with it. I might take it apart and see if there's any issues with any of the system inside. But if it's a single file game, let me just demonstrate for clarity that it does work, because everything I've shown you so far doesn't work. Okay, I know Super Mario World is in there, but I'm going to load this one up because I know it loads. I could have any game in there right now. Okay, so that one's loaded. Okay, so it's crashing a couple of times, but this is old kit, so when I am taking it apart here to have a look inside. But you can see what it's meant to do, because it booted the Monopoly game, it booted Super Mario World. Aladdin booted but crashed, so I'm not sure what's going on with that one. I'm going to take it apart now and have a look inside of it, because I think that something has gone in there, and that's what's stopping it from doing the load and the saving of files. When I was trying to back up some bigger games like Street Fighter 2 and other things like that, it was crashing. I know certain games on these don't work, so I've got Killer Instinct here, and I've got Donkey Kong Country and things like those. Those don't back up. There's a little bit of technology or a little bit of code in them that I think it stopped them from working on action replays as well. So when you plugged it in, and it basically it's got to go through that extra layer to get to your Super Nintendo, and that causes a slight delay on the load speed, and the cartridge detects that load speed and then throws up a piracy warning or a message saying about not being able to play on backups. So there's a bit of a nightmare that you can't back up everything, but fair play to Nintendo, they caught onto that fairly quickly after these things coming out. So I'm going to take it apart, have a look at what the issues are inside, see if I need to replace anything. If I do, I'll sort that at the same time. If not, we'll put it back together and see if we can format some of these drives and get things working. Okay, let's take a look. Oh, okay. So I can see straight away some horrible gooey stuff. Okay, so this could be our issue. So that's a battery that is on our system. So if that has leaked all here, as you can see, that could be causing us an issue. Now look at the pins on that. Look at the pins on that. Okay, let's lift it out. Yeah, it's a bit messed up on that side as well. The two solder points shows you the positive and negative. So okay, I might have a battery here that'll fit this. I don't think it's got exactly the same connectors on it. I think mine's got a 3-pin for the earth, or a 2-pin for the earth. The rest of it is pretty cool, isn't it? So these are obviously the RAM chips, and the ROM chips for storing the games in them. Processor system as well. Yeah, pretty simple bit of kit, but also pretty sophisticated for the time. 2 ports, 1 in, 1 out as well. I wonder what else this could run. I wondered if it could run anything off a CD or off a hard drive or anything else, but a USB is cool anyway. Okay, so I'm going to solder that, take that out, clean it up. My good old friend isopropyl alcohol. Give it all a nice clean. Clean up the board as well, because it's splattered everywhere. It's rotting some of those pads as well, and that traces up there. Well, not the traces, but the board itself. So I'm going to clean this right up and give it another go. Let's take a look. Okay, so we're back to where we were. I soldered the new battery in. One of the prettiest things to solder in. It was a little bit of a mess, that board, so I've soldered it back in. I'm pretty happy that the connection's back in there. Let's test backing up this Cool Spot game again. So we're going to copy the game card. I'm going to put it to slot 69. Well, actually, okay, so let's test backing up this Cool Spot, but first of all I'm going to format the disk. So we've gone to 69 again, and it's formatted to 1.44 megabytes. Oh, there you go, 80 slots it gives on there. I never know what these numbers are counted up or down to. It's a mystery to me. But anyway, we're going to format slot number 69 to 80 slots, I suppose. 80 bits, 80 somethings, 80 empties. Just making sure there's no files in there. When we backed up that Cool Spot before and it failed, I want to make sure that's gone. Okay, so that's done. I'm going to copy the game card. I'm going to do it to a single file, and I'm going to call it cool again. Oh no, what have I done? Select, delete. Okay, there we go, press B to start. Okay, awesome. So that's backed up. What I want to do is test that file now, but I'm going to take Cool Spot out. I'm going to put Super Mario World in, and power back on. Select this back to slot number 69. So we're on 69 floppy drive. Insert disk. Here's our file cool. Press B to load it. Okay, so we're loading. Fairly quick, isn't it? I know it's not as quick as a cartridge, as I said earlier, but it's loading off a USB. Okay, I think that's got further than it did before. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and Cool Spot. Awesome. Wasn't a massive fan of this game, to be totally honest. No, I played it for the Game Boy more than anything, and it was a bit hard than that. It wasn't the best port. All working. Okay guys, so there we have it, a up and running system now. I don't know how much difference that battery is going to actually make, but the backup and the loading of that Cool Spot actually worked after I changed the battery out, so it's possibly helped it in some way, or whether just the memory had cleared whilst I was messing around with it, I don't know. But I'm happy there's a newer battery in there now. That acid is eating into that board. I'd never get it clean. If I do it anymore, it's eating so deep into that board that I'm going to have to start scraping layers off, and then it could cause all sorts of damage on there. That's one of the worst battery damages I've seen. That's worse than the Game Boy printer video that I've done before. But it's a cool bit of kit. I hope you agree. I think that there's a lot of things I can be playing around with it on this, and the upgrade to the USB floppy drive is a pretty nice addition too. So now I can back up all my games onto those. I can transfer them onto the PC. I can do whatever I want with them. It's a bit of a novelty, to be totally honest. It's never going to be one of those pieces of kit that I'm using day in, day out, but it's nice to be able to have a play around with, and a bit of a nostalgia piece of kit, because I seen it in our magazine years ago, but that was probably the Super Wildcard, which is a better piece of kit than this, I think. And I just always wanted it. I always wanted one as a kid, and I've always been in the back of my mind that I wanted to get one growing up. I got this for ridiculously cheap. I'll find the eBay listing now and stick it up, but I think I got the Famicom, the disc drive, and the Supercom for about £45, which is pretty amazing if you think of it. So yeah, a couple of ratty old control pads and other things came with it too, but I'm not going to be playing with those. They're going in the spares box. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. Hope this has been of interest to you guys. Usual things at the end of the videos. Give us a like, comment down below any comments you got around the disc systems or anything else that you had, or any comments or questions you got about it. And of course, if you're new here, subscribe. Lots of new videos to come. I've got a couple more planned while we're in lockdown, so I'm going to get on with those in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, catch you soon.